In the cold embrace of an ancient fortress monastery, Twilight clung to every stone as though the past itself refused to let go. The vast, weathered walls, carved from the living rock of a long-forgotten world, rose in silent testimony to secrets and lost oaths. Suspensor globes, their pale golden light flickering like the dying embers of an old fire, cast elongated shadows across the vaulted corridors. Here, in this sanctum of memory, the weight of centuries pressed down on every breath, and every whispered word seemed destined to echo into eternity. At the heart of the monastery lay the scriptorium, a hallowed hall where time appeared to slow, and the murmur of ancient machinery provided a constant, ghostly rhythm. Along the stone walls, rows of meticulously arranged data slates and brittle scrolls bore the records of heroes and martyrs, their faded ink and worn parchments testifying to a legacy of valor and sorrow. The atmosphere was thick with the mingled scents of ink, aged vellum, and cold, damp stone, a potent reminder that here, in the quiet of forgotten days, the past was as present as the air itself. In a secluded corner of the scriptorium, Brother Kalin sat before a time-worn stone bench. With steady determination, he guided his quill across a fresh sheet of vellum. The scratching of the nib against the fragile paper was rhythmic and deliberate, a quiet, solitary hymn to duty. Kalin's dark, earnest eyes were fixed on the unfolding text, each word a stitch in the vast tapestry of the Legion's sacred history. His task was not merely to record facts, it was a solemn act of preservation, a promise that the deeds, the honor, and the sorrows of those who had come before would not be lost to the ravages of time. As his pen danced upon the page, a subtle hum of ancient mechanism resonated in the background, a constant, almost imperceptible reminder that the monastery itself was alive with memory. Outside the narrow lancet windows, the world beyond was shrouded in a spectral mist. In that distant haze, the whispers of long-forgotten battles and the echo of lost voices mingled with the cool night air. Each flicker of light from the Suspensor globes and each soft creak of the aged stone seemed to carry with it the weight of 1,000 untold stories. The scriptorium was more than a repository of records. It was a living mausoleum of hope and despair. Carved inscriptions, remnants of ancient oaths and secret invocations adorned the walls, their faded letters speaking silently of an age when the Emperor's vision was pure and unyielding. Hidden within alcoves and behind thick stone doors, forbidden manuscripts and relics lay in wait, guarded by those sworn to protect their mysteries at all costs. In these quiet recesses, the footsteps of elder custodians could be heard, their measured tread a solemn metronome marking the passage of time. Kalin paused briefly, lifting his gaze to the suspended light above. In that fleeting moment, he sensed the presence of those who had come before, unsung heroes, venerable scribes, and warriors whose sacrifices had paved the way for the Legion's destiny. The spectral weight of their memories filled him with both awe and a profound melancholy. He knew that every word he inscribed was a bond, a fragile link connecting the future with the embers of the past, ensuring that the legacy of the Dark Angels would endure, even amid the relentless march of oblivion. Outside, the heavy vault doors groaned in the shifting wind, a sound that resonated like a distant lament. Their slow, creaking rhythm served as a reminder that the chronicles of the past were never truly silent. They were alive, ever waiting to be awakened by the diligent hand of a faithful scribe. With each measured stroke of his quill, Kalin wove a story of duty and defiance, of hope intermingled with inevitable decay. In that quiet, sacred space, the first lines of a saga, steeped in honor, sacrifice, and a relentless pursuit of truth began to take shape. Thus, in the dim glow of ancient light and amidst the hallowed silence of the monastery, the chronicle of the Legion was born. Every word inscribed on that delicate vellum was an oath, a promise that even as the world outside succumbed to chaos and despair, the legacy of those long past would forever shine like a solitary star in the endless night. Beneath the eternal twilight of the Imperium's sprawling dominion, far removed from the hallowed halls of the monastery, a darker process was underway, a process that would give birth to a legion unlike any the galaxy had ever known. In secret chambers carved into the bedrock of forgotten worlds, the Emperor's clandestine design was set into motion. Here, in the oppressive silence punctuated only by the rhythmic clang of forges and the whisper of ancient incantations, the raw materials of humanity were gathered and refined into an instrument of unyielding might. In dim corridors shrouded in perpetual shadow, chosen souls, scarred by the brutality of endless war and tempered by the harshness of life on broken worlds, were drawn together. Each individual, selected not for their birthright or pedigree, but for the indomitable spirit that flickered within, was ushered into an unspoken covenant. The Emperor, whose vision transcended mortal ken, had decreed that these warriors, united by fate and bound by sacrifice, would form the nucleus of a force to stand as the bulwark of humanity against the encroaching darkness. Within these secret vaults, lit only by the sickly glow of arcane machinery and the intermittent flash of welding torches, rituals of transformation were performed with both scientific precision and ritualistic fervor. The air, heavy with the acrid scent of burning metal and the subtle aroma of consecrated oils, bore witness to the melding of flesh and machine. In chambers lined with cryptic symbols and ancient relics, the subjects underwent procedures that stripped away their mortal frailties and replaced them with enhancements wrought in the Emperor's own image. Their bones were reinforced, their senses sharpened, and their resolve tempered to steel, each modification a testament to the relentless drive for perfection. The process was as much spiritual as it was physical. Amid the sterile hum of machine and the cold logic of genetic engineering, whispered prayers and solemn oaths echoed off stone walls. These were not mere acts of transformation, they were rites of rebirth. Every incised scar and every spark of energy that coursed through their veins symbolized a rebirth from the ashes of human frailty into the relentless fury of the warrior. In the sacred darkness, beneath the watchful gaze of the Emperor's chosen custodians, these men and women were remade, no longer mere mortals, but the harbingers of a new order. Over time, as the procedures progressed and the metamorphosis took hold, the assembled warriors began to show signs of something greater than their individual parts. Their eyes, once filled with the despair of a shattered existence, now burned with a fierce, unyielding light, a light born of purpose and hardened resolve. In the flickering glow of the forges, they stood as living symbols of the Emperor's unspoken promise, that humanity could rise from the depths of oblivion, reborn through sacrifice and tempered in the crucible of relentless conflict. The transformation was not without its cost. Each life, already marked by struggle, was now burdened with a new destiny, a destiny defined by ceaseless duty and the eternal vigilance demanded by an Imperium besieged on all sides. The bonds forged in these secret chambers were not of friendship, but of mutual necessity. Every warrior understood that his own survival depended on the unwavering strength of his brothers in arms. In that crucible of creation, individual ambition was extinguished, replaced by a collective will that burned as bright as the forges that remade them. As the final rites were performed and the echoes of ancient hymns faded into the stone corridors, the nascent legion stood assembled, silent, formidable, and resolute. They were a living testament to the Emperor's vision, a force tempered by sacrifice and forged in the crucible of unyielding conflict. Their armor, dark as the void from which they were born, bore the scars of countless trials, each mark a silent ode to the struggle endured and the price paid for perfection. In that moment, beneath the oppressive weight of destiny and amidst the echoes of forgotten oaths, the genesis of a legion was complete. The warriors, reborn through fire, blood, and relentless determination, were no longer the fragmented remnants of a fallen humanity. They had been transformed into a singular, relentless force, destined to become the scourge of the enemy and the vanguard of the Imperium's defiant hope. Thus, in the hidden depths of an Imperium shrouded in secrecy, the dark birth of the Legion was sealed, a genesis wrought in the crucible of despair and tempered by the light of unyielding resolve. In the barren wilderness of an untamed world, beneath a sky scarred by crimson twilight and swirling mists, an ancient power stirred in solitude. Far removed from the cloistered halls of the fortress monastery and the secret vaults of transformation, a solitary figure lay dormant amid the savage, windswept plains. Here, where nature reigned unchallenged and chaos was etched into the very fabric of existence, the Primarch, lost to time and hidden by fate, began to awaken. The ground was a tapestry of cracked earth and tangled briars, bearing the scars of countless battles waged between man and nature. As the first pale rays of a harsh, unyielding sun broke through a veil of storm clouds, a shudder ran through the ancient soil. Slowly, as if roused by a call older than the stars, the dormant form stirred. Muscles, long untested by the rigors of battle, began to twitch with an unfamiliar urgency. A deep, resonant heartbeat emerged, echoing in harmony with the distant roar of primordial winds. Wrapped in the remnants of tattered archaic armor that bore symbols now faded by the relentless passage of time, the Primarch rose with a dignity that belied his long slumber. His eyes, when at last they opened, shone with a piercing intensity that cut through the gloom of the desolate landscape. In that moment, the wild heart of the planet and the disciplined soul of a warrior converged in a being who was destined to reshape the fate of his legion and the Imperium itself. He surveyed the land with a quiet, measured resolve, as though every detail, each jagged rock, each twisted tree, spoke a language of ancient lore and forgotten oaths. The silence of the wilderness was profound, punctuated only by the rustle of wind through barren fields and the distant cry of unseen beasts. It was a silence that held both promise and peril, a reminder that in this crucible of raw existence only those tempered by hardship could hope to endure. As the Primarch took his first tentative steps upon the scarred earth, the landscape seemed to awaken with him. The very air shimmered with an ethereal charge, as though the latent power of the planet recognized a kindred spirit. He paused at the crest of a rocky outcrop, where the land opened to reveal a vast panorama of desolation and raw beauty. Here the horizon bled into a spectrum of burnt sienna and deep umber, a canvas upon which the relentless forces of nature and time had painted a story of survival and transformation. Memories of an existence both forgotten and predestined began to surface in his mind, fragmented echoes of a life that had been severed from the world of men. In those fleeting visions, he saw the Emperor's face, stern and resolute, and heard the distant strains of an oath whispered in the dark. It was as though the very essence of his being was linked to a promise of redemption and conquest, a destiny written in the stars, and forged in the fires of countless battles. The Primarch's awakening was not marked by fanfare or the proclamations of heralds. It was a quiet, solitary resurgence, as personal as it was profound. Every step he took was measured, each movement imbued with the strength of centuries of latent potential. In the solitude of the wild, he felt the pulse of the planet merging with his own, a communion of spirit and nature that granted him clarity and resolve. He understood that his emergence was not merely an act of chance, but a deliberate call to arms, a summons to reclaim a destiny that had been denied for far too long. As the day wore on, the once dormant warrior began to gather the scattered remnants of his strength. The harsh elements of the world, scorching heat by day, biting cold by night, served only to further harden his resolve. In the silence of the vast, unyielding wilderness, he forged an inner sanctuary where the memories of loss and betrayal could be transmuted into a fierce determination. Every breath he drew was a silent vow, every heartbeat a promise to rise above the desolation and become the beacon of hope that the Imperium so desperately needed. Thus, on that harsh, untamed world, the awakening of the Primarch was complete. A rebirth not marked by celestial fanfare, but by the raw, uncompromising forces of nature itself. With eyes that burned like twin stars in the twilight, he set forth on a solitary path, determined to carve his destiny in the annals of the Legion. In the heart of a wilderness where chaos reigned supreme, a new chapter of war, honor, and relentless purpose had begun. Deep within the labyrinthine corridors of the ancient fortress, far from the natural light of distant worlds, a secret ritual unfolded in silence. In the subterranean sanctum carved out of living rock, the nascent warriors gathered in a circle around a towering obsidian monolith inscribed with cryptic runes. The air was heavy with incense and the tang of burning oil, a heady blend that spoke of both purification and damnation. Here, away from the eyes of the uninitiated, the transformation into something other than mortal was set in motion. Under the watchful gaze of the chapter's venerable custodians, the warriors knelt in unison. Their bodies, already marked by the scars of endless conflict, trembled not only from the chill of stone, but from the weight of what was to come. Each warrior's heart beat with the ferocity of a dying star, poised to be reborn through sacrifice. The chamber was dimly lit by flickering flame candles and the eerie glow of arcane machinery, casting shifting shadows that danced like specters upon the walls. In this hushed environment, silence reigned, a silence filled with anticipation and the promise of metamorphosis. At the center of the circle, a figure draped in dark, flowing robes stepped forward. His voice, low and measured, resonated through the cavernous space as he intoned the ancient rites. Every syllable carried the gravitas of forbidden lore, an incantation that transcended mortal language and reached into the depths of the soul. The warriors listened, their minds and bodies merging with the rhythm of his words, as if each sound was a chisel carving away the imperfections of their former selves. In that moment, the air itself seemed to vibrate with an otherworldly energy. The incantations summoned unseen forces, echoes of primordial chaos and order entwined, a power that surged like a dark tide through the cavern. Each warrior felt this force course through their veins, igniting a transformation that was both physical and spiritual. Limbs tensed and eyes glazed with newfound intensity, as if the spark of the Emperor's vision had been kindled deep within them. The ritual was not merely a passage of flesh. It was a reforging of identity. With every whispered verse and every deliberate gesture, the warriors shed the vestiges of their mortal past. Their skin, once marked by the familiar scars of battle, now seemed to absorb the darkness around them, melding into an armor of shadow. This ascension was both a rebirth and a descent, a journey into the depths of darkness, where light was not extinguished, but redefined. They were to be the Dark Angels, forged in the crucible of endless war and purified by the bitter fires of sacrifice. As the incantations reached their crescendo, the obsidian monolith pulsed with a deep, resonant hum. Its surface shimmered with patterns that mimicked the celestial dance of distant stars, and for a fleeting moment, the warriors beheld visions of a future wrought in both glory and torment. In these brief flashes, they saw themselves clad in armor as dark as the void, their eyes burning with an unyielding purpose. They witnessed battles waged across forsaken worlds, where the clash of steel and the roar of bolters marked the relentless march of destiny. Yet, interwoven with these images was an undercurrent of sorrow, a reminder that their ascension came at the cost of innocence and the relentless burden of duty. When the ritual reached its end, the chamber fell into a profound, reverent silence. The incantations subsided like the retreating tide, leaving behind an echo of the dark promise they had invoked. One by one, the warriors rose to their feet, their movements now imbued with a grace and ferocity that belied their former mortal limitations. Their faces, hardened by transformation, bore the somber expression of those who had been reborn into a new order, an order defined not by the fleeting light of hope, but by the enduring shadow of purpose. In that moment, as the final remnants of the ritual's power dissipated into the stone, it was clear that a profound change had taken hold. The warriors had ascended into darkness, a darkness not of despair, but of unyielding resolve. They were now the Dark Angels, sworn to a destiny steeped in both sacrifice and retribution. Their transformation was complete. The light of their former selves had been eclipsed by the cold, relentless void of a new, formidable existence. Thus, beneath the ancient runes and in the silent echo of incantations past, the ascension into darkness was sealed, a metamorphosis that would forever mark the warriors as both saviors and executioners in the eternal war that raged across the stars. The roar of engines and the hum of ancient propulsion systems filled the air as the colossal fleet prepared to leave the sanctuary of their dark fortress. In the endless void of space, the Dark Angels' mighty vessels glided away from the gravitational pull of their long-forgotten home. Massive warships, scarred by past battles yet imbued with an unyielding resolve, soared into the starry expanse, each one a testament to the unbreakable spirit of the Legion. As the fleet surged into the cosmic sea, the void itself seemed to come alive with anticipation. Nebulae of burning gas and distant quasars offered a spectral backdrop, their eerie light painting the darkness in hues of crimson and indigo. The dark, immutable silence of space was punctuated by the thunder of macro cannons and the crackle of energy weapons as the Legion launched its opening salvo against an enemy fleet that dared to challenge the Emperor's decree. The first skirmish erupted on the fringes of a shattered system, a battleground where worlds once teeming with life now lay as silent memorials to ancient conflicts. In the midst of this interstellar storm, the banners of the Dark Angels spread like a shadow over desolate planets. Every battle, every encounter, was etched into the fabric of the cosmos, a reminder of the Legion's relentless march against the encroaching darkness. Epic engagements unfolded in the void, starships clashed in balletic maneuvers, their brilliant bursts of plasma illuminating the cold abyss for mere moments, before fading into obscurity. Amid the chaos, the disciplined formations of the Dark Angels moved with deadly precision, each maneuver a calculated step in an eternal dance of war. Yet even as their weapons carved through enemy lines and the fleet pushed ever deeper into hostile territory, subtle strains of discord began to simmer beneath the surface of unity. In the confined command decks of battle barges and on the bridge of flagship vessels, voices rose in low, hushed debates. Officers, their expressions hardened by the rigors of endless combat, exchanged terse words that belied an undercurrent of internal tension. In the silent language of battle, pride and ambition quietly warred with the burden of duty, casting long shadows over the collective resolve. Across the fleet, the once unassailable bonds that had united the warriors now faced the strain of ceaseless conflict. While external enemies raged with furious intensity, internal debates over strategy and honor slowly began to erode the pristine image of brotherhood. The High Council of Commanders, seated around tables carved from ancient stone, convened in dimly lit war rooms. Their discussions, steeped in the legacy of old oaths and the bitter memories of past betrayals, spoke of tactical brilliance, yet hinted at fractures that could one day widen into irreparable schisms. The dark glow of Suspensor displays and the quiet tapping of data slates bore witness to both the unwavering determination to press on and the silent, gnawing fear that unity might one day falter. Amid these internal reverberations, the Legion pressed onward with a singular purpose. Every ship, every warrior was propelled by the unyielding conviction that they were the Emperor's chosen vanguard, a force destined to reclaim shattered worlds and to bring retribution upon those who defied the divine order. Battles raged across the void, each one a microcosm of an endless crusade that spanned the cosmos. In one engagement, a battered enemy cruiser was reduced to a floating husk, its remnants scattered like stardust in the wake of a barrage of bolter fire and searing plasma. In another, a fleet of Xeno's raiders, their forms twisted by unholy mutations, found themselves outmaneuvered and outgunned by the disciplined ranks of the Dark Angels. The vast theater of space was not only a stage for titanic conflicts, but also a crucible in which the souls of the warriors were tested. As cosmic dust mingled with the sparks of dying stars, the relentless pace of battle left scars both visible and hidden. The very act of war in the void was a trial by fire, forging a bond of iron among those who dared to stand together against the overwhelming darkness. Yet in this crucible, each fleeting victory was countered by the ever-present spectre of internal discord, a reminder that the path to glory was as perilous as it was inevitable. Thus, as the fleet advanced deeper into the uncharted sectors of the galaxy, the stage was set for a crusade of legendary proportions. The Dark Angels, their banners stretched wide across the cosmos, became both the instruments of the Emperor's wrath and the bearers of an unspoken burden, a burden of unity, sacrifice, and the silent hope that, even amid the cacophony of war and internal strife, their light would pierce the darkness of the void. Within the steel corridors of the flagship, a subtle disquiet had begun to infiltrate the ranks of the Dark Angels. The once unyielding brotherhood, united by a singular purpose, now found its unity imperiled by seeds of mistrust. In the dim glow of Suspensor-lit passageways, furtive glances were exchanged, glances that carried unspoken ambitions and quiet doubts. Conversations that once resounded with the unwavering resolve of loyal warriors now softened into murmurs, their tones laced with hesitation and veiled inquiry. In a shadowed corner of the command deck, away from prying eyes, a small circle of officers gathered. Their faces were etched with fatigue and an undercurrent of resentment. They spoke in hushed tones about orders that seemed to favor certain commanders, and of decisions made behind closed doors by the High Council. One among them, Captain Varys, his eyes darting nervously over his shoulder, remarked in a voice barely above a whisper, "There is more at play here than mere strategy. Some of us, our brothers, nurture ambitions that extend far beyond our sacred duty." His words, though tentative, set the tone for the clandestine meeting. In the labyrinthine network of narrow corridors, secret meetings unfolded like dark petals in the night. Officers slipped into secluded alcoves, their footsteps muffled by the echo of distant engine hums and the steady pulse of the fleet's core. Beneath the shadow of ancient, engraved runes on the bulkheads, they exchanged confidential missives and coded signals, each gesture a subtle act of defiance against the established order. Their eyes, heavy with the burden of unspoken grievances, flicked from one face to the next, silently questioning loyalties that had once been held as unassailable. Among these quiet conspirators was Lieutenant Selan, a man whose ambition was masked behind a facade of impeccable duty. His every word and calculated pause hinted at secret desires to rise above his station, a desire that had begun to ferment into something dangerous. In a discreet corridor near the engineering deck, Selan conferred with another officer, his voice low and measured. "Our strength lies not only in our martial prowess, but in the unity of our purpose. Yet I fear that unity is beginning to splinter like brittle stone." The implication was clear. Hidden ambitions, if left unchecked, could sow the seeds of schism within the very heart of the Legion. Even as the fleet hurtled through the void, the dissonance within its ranks grew more insidious. In the quiet hum of the briefing rooms and the stark isolation of the personal quarters, whispers of betrayal wove a tapestry of doubt. There were rumors, fleeting and unsubstantiated, that some among the officers had secretly aligned themselves with unknown forces, their loyalty compromised by promises of power and glory in exchange for subtle subversions of duty. These murmurs spread like a slow, corrosive poison, infecting minds with suspicion and casting long, dark shadows over every official decree. The Primarch, ever vigilant even from a distance, began to sense the tremors of dissent. His own meditations, conducted in the silent sanctum of his private chamber aboard the flagship, were troubled by visions of fractured brotherhood. In those moments of introspection, he recalled the sacred oaths once sworn with unyielding fervor, a binding covenant that now seemed to fray at its edges. The Primarch's thoughts were a maelstrom of determination and despair, a relentless pursuit of unity weighed down by the inevitability of human frailty. In the midst of these internal stirrings, an event unfolded that would forever alter the fabric of the Legion. During a routine maneuver, a critical communication channel was intercepted, a cryptic message implying that certain officers had been in clandestine contact with unknown entities. The revelation, though shrouded in ambiguity, ignited a spark of panic among those who remained steadfastly loyal. In hastily convened councils, stern faces and clenched fists spoke of honor betrayed and a brotherhood now teetering on the brink of disintegration. The air grew heavy with a tension that was as palpable as the cold metal that surrounded them. Yet, for all the undercurrents of betrayal, the core of the Dark Angels remained resolute. Despite the secretive plots and the furtive glances, a deeper, unspoken truth persevered. The memories of past sacrifices and the legacy of unyielding duty. The seeds of discord had been sown, and the spectre of schism loomed like a dark cloud over the Legion. But even as mistrust and hidden ambitions began to fracture the veneer of unity, the call to honor and the shadow of the Emperor's vision continued to bind them, a tenuous thread that, if not nurtured, could unravel the Brotherhood forever. In the silence that followed these whispered conspiracies, The fleet pressed onward into the void, each vessel carrying not only the weight of its firepower, but also the quiet, perilous murmurs of betrayal that threatened to shatter a legacy built on centuries of shared sacrifice. The skies above the fortress world of Iron Bastion burned with the fire of 1,000 incendiary salvos as the Dark Angel's fleet drew near. Iron Bastion, a colossal citadel carved into an asteroid's iron core and adorned with spiked battlements and towering ramparts, stood defiant against the void. For centuries, it had been the impregnable stronghold of a loyalist regime, until the Xenos horde and renegade forces, fueled by unholy ambition, converged upon its ancient gates. On the battlements, where rusted metal met the biting cold of space, the defenders readied themselves for the coming storm. The clamor of bolter fire and the shriek of plasma discharges echoed across the scarred landscape as the enemy advanced. Amid this cacophony of war, the Dark Angels, stern, resolute, and unyielding, marched forth to reclaim the honor of their forebears. Their armor, dark as the void from which they emerged, gleamed under the light of distant stars, and each step on the ironclad ramparts was a vow of retribution. The siege began in earnest when the enemy's first assault shattered the silence. Waves of Xenos warriors, their grotesque forms twisted by alien mutations, surged against the fortified walls. Alongside them, renegade human battalions, disillusioned and desperate, fought with a ferocity born of betrayal. The clash was instantaneous, a maelstrom of explosive charges and relentless gunfire that transformed the Bastion's outer walls into a canvas of blood and scorched metal. On the ramparts, Captain Tharion led his contingent with grim determination. His voice, resolute as iron, cut through the chaos. "Stand firm. For the Emperor and for our fallen brothers, this wall is our honor, and it will not be breached." His words stirred the hearts of the Dark Angels, and they rallied, forming a phalanx that met the enemy head-on. The clash of power fists against serrated claws, of bolters roaring against the shriek of alien war cries, reverberated along the fortress's ancient stone. Explosions rocked the outer defenses. Massive siege engines, dark behemoths engineered by traitorous minds, pummeled the ramparts with titanic force. Cracks splintered across Iron Bastion's once impenetrable facade, and for a harrowing moment, the line between honor and ruin blurred. Yet, amid the turmoil, the defenders held, a grim dance of valor and devastation played out beneath a sky torn asunder by relentless assault. Below, in the shadow of the crumbling walls, the cost of honor was paid in torrents of blood and sacrifice. Dark Angels fell in silent testament to their unwavering duty, their names forever etched into the annals of the fortress's legacy. Each loss was a scar upon the Legion's soul, a reminder that every victory demanded a price. In the chaos of battle, the banner of the Dark Angels soared defiantly, a beacon of light amid the onslaught, even as it was stained with the crimson hues of sacrifice. The enemy, sensing the unyielding resolve of the defenders, pressed on with renewed ferocity. In the labyrinthine passages beneath the fortress, where the echo of distant battles mingled with the creak of ancient mechanisms, secret saboteurs worked to undermine the Bastion's foundations. They planted explosive charges and sabotaged vital conduits, their treachery a silent counterpoint to the overt fury on the ramparts. When these devices detonated, shockwaves rippled through the structure, sending plumes of fire and debris skyward, a stark illustration of the enemy's ruthlessness. Yet, as the inferno spread, so too did the resolute spirit of the Dark Angels. From hidden recesses within Iron Bastion, reinforcements emerged, bolstered by the resolve of veterans who had witnessed the fall of countless worlds. With precision born of endless wars, They unleashed torrents of retributive fire upon the invaders, turning the tide of battle in a series of desperate, decisive moments. The enemy's ranks faltered under the relentless barrage, their ferocious onslaught blunted by the indomitable will of the defenders. In the midst of this brutal contest, the sanctity of honor and duty shone through. Amid shattered stone and smouldering wreckage, a young sergeant, his face smeared with soot and determination, raised his bolter high and vowed, "For every life we sacrifice, the legacy of our order grows stronger." His cry, carried on the wind, resonated with the hearts of his comrades and became a rallying call amid the din of combat. As the siege raged on beneath a sky of fire and ruin, Iron Bastion became both a crucible of suffering and a monument to the unwavering spirit of the Dark Angels. The battle was a stark reminder that in the pursuit of honor, every drop of blood spilled, every life lost on the iron battlements, was a tribute to the eternal struggle against the encroaching darkness. In that cauldron of war, valor and devastation intertwined, forging a legacy of sacrifice that would endure through the ages. In the deadened corridors of a shattered outpost, where even the light of distant stars seemed to recoil from the encroaching darkness, the Primarch moved with the silent determination of a predator on the prowl. Cloaked in shadows and burdened with a grief that etched deep into his soul, he had set out on a covert, relentless pursuit, a hunt to ferret out the traitors that had tainted the sacred honor of his legion. His every step echoed in the desolation of a ruined world, a world whose crumbling edifices and warped structures bore witness to betrayal and the decay of forgotten oaths. The journey led him through corridors twisted by the corrupting influence of the warp, where reality itself appeared to bleed into nightmare. The once hallowed halls of an ancient temple now lay in ruin, its once majestic arches scarred by unholy energies and strewn with the remnants of shattered statues and desecrated relics. Here, amid the debris and malignant whispers of lost souls, the Primarch sought signs of the fallen, those who had betrayed their brothers, turning their backs on the unyielding call of duty. In this labyrinth of decay, every shattered column and every tangle of corrupted vines told a tale of defiance and despair. The air was thick with a palpable miasma, a toxic blend of decay and the raw, unpredictable forces of the warp. It was in this forsaken place that the Primarch's resolve hardened further, each step fueled by the bitter memory of brotherhood torn asunder. His eyes, dark and unyielding, scanned the haunted remains of what had once been a beacon of hope, a sanctuary now reduced to rubble by treachery and the inexorable march of time. As he pressed deeper into the labyrinth, the corridors began to shift and twist unnaturally. Walls pulsed with a sickly phosphorescent glow, and dissonant echoes of laughter and screams, both human and something far less definable, whispered around every corner. It was as though the very architecture of the place had been warped by the malefic forces that had claimed the souls of the fallen. Yet, amid the surreal horror, the Primarch's determination burned with a cold, exacting fury. Every warped corridor, every ruined chamber, was a step closer to confronting the traitors whose treachery had shattered the unity of his once proud legion. In the heart of these corrupted ruins, he found the first tangible sign of defiance, a tattered banner, half buried beneath debris and scorched by unholy fire. The banner, bearing the insignia of the Legion, but defaced with symbols of blasphemy, was a silent testament to the betrayal that had seeped into the very marrow of his brothers. With a clenched fist, the Primarch vowed silently to reclaim the honor that had been so grievously tarnished. Vengeance and grief wove together in his heart as he pressed forward, determined to root out every remnant of the treacherous stain. Every encounter in that accursed place tested him anew, Shadows seemed to slither at the edges of his vision, flickers of movement that might have been his fallen brethren or the twisted phantasms of the warp. In moments of eerie silence, he could almost hear the murmurs of those who had once sworn fealty to the Emperor, their voices laden with sorrow and regret. Yet the Primarch would not be swayed. His purpose was singular, unyielding. His blade, a relic of unbreakable resolve, gleamed with the promise of retribution as he severed the bonds of corruption that clung to the very stone. As the hunt continued, the labyrinth revealed more than just physical remnants of treachery. It unveiled the psychological scars of betrayal. Abandoned tokens of lost brotherhood lay scattered like broken dreams. A tarnished sigil here, a discarded relic there, each one a silent epitaph to a promise once made. The Primarch gathered these tokens as grim evidence of the fallen's defiance, a tally of lost honor that fueled his every stride. In that relentless pursuit through cursed ruins and warp-twisted passageways, the Primarch became both avenger and mourner. Vengeance sharpened his every sense, while grief lent a weight to his steps that no enemy force could ever replicate. With every traitor confronted, every vile echo of dissent purged from the sanctum of his memory, he moved closer to reclaiming the Legion's once sacred honor. The hunt was arduous, and the path was strewn with the remnants of shattered loyalty. But in the silence of that unholy place, his oath resounded like a clarion call, a vow that the fallen would be found, and their treachery would be met with a reckoning as inexorable as the march of time itself. In the endless darkness of the void, where the cold silence of space becomes a living, breathing entity, the dark angels found themselves thrust into a theater of war more vast and merciless than any they had ever encountered. As the fleet surged forward, the void itself seemed to churn with the restless energies of the warp, a swirling maelstrom of untamed power that battered the hulls of their colossal warships with invisible, relentless force. The Starfleet, an armada of grim, battle-worn vessels, emerged as islands of determination amid a cosmic sea of despair. Each ship, its plating scarred by countless encounters, bore the weight of duty as it navigated treacherous warp currents. These currents, unpredictable and ever-shifting, roiled like a living tide, distorting reality and time around them. In the midst of this chaos, desperate engagements unfolded. Bolter fire and plasma discharges streaked across the darkness like errant comets, while the eerie glow of warp energies illuminated the battlefield in flashes of unholy light. Amid the tumult, the Dark Angels' formations, once paragons of unyielding unity, were tested to their very limits. Commanders barked orders over the din of interstellar combat, their voices resolute despite the ever-present dread. Each maneuver was a battle against not only an external enemy, but against the chaos that threatened to tear the fleet apart from within. Every starship, every fighter craft, was a cog in an immense war machine, its purpose sharpened by necessity and hardened by sacrifice. In this vast arena of shifting light and shadow, the unity of the Legion was both their greatest strength and a constant source of vulnerability. Isolation became an ever-present companion in the void. Far from the comforting proximity of solid ground or the reassuring hum of a well-tended monastery, the warriors were adrift in an ocean of endless night. The silence of space, punctuated only by the ferocious sounds of battle, lent an overwhelming sense of solitude to each soul aboard. In the emptiness, even the camaraderie forged in the heat of combat was overshadowed by a gnawing loneliness, as if each warrior carried the weight of the entire Imperium on their shoulders. This isolation deepened the cosmic dread that seeped into every crevice of the fleet. a reminder that the fate of humanity hung precariously in the balance. As the Dark Angels pressed onward, they encountered enemy formations emerging like phantoms from the depths of the warp. Xenos raiders, their forms twisted and contorted by the chaotic energies of their realm, launched sudden and savage assaults. Renegade vessels piloted by men corrupted by ambition and despair darted through the void with reckless abandon. The ensuing clashes were desperate and ferocious, each engagement a maelstrom of raw power, strategy, and bitter resolve. Explosions rippled across the darkness, and the roar of energy cannons echoed like the cries of ancient titans in the void. Within the command bridges of the flagship, the Primarch and his lieutenants stared intently at shifting holographic maps and turbulent data streams, their eyes reflecting both determination and an undercurrent of silent worry. The fleet's navigation through the warp was fraught with peril. Every miscalculation could strand them in a realm of eternal chaos, or worse yet, lead them into an ambush set by unseen foes. In those moments, the gravity of their mission became palpable, a grim reminder that the Imperium itself teetered on the brink of annihilation, its hope embodied in these very warriors who dared defy the encroaching darkness. Yet even as the relentless tide of war battered the fleet, there was a quiet, steadfast resolve among the Dark Angels. Amid the swirling chaos, they clung to the memories of their sacred oaths, the lessons of honor and duty etched into their very souls. In the isolation of space, their bond was the solitary light against the all-consuming gloom, a light that refused to be extinguished, no matter how deep the void or how fierce the enemy. Thus, in the unyielding expanse of the cosmos, where every moment was a battle against the chaotic forces of the warp, the Dark Angels fought on. Their Starfleet, battered but unbroken, sailed through the void with a resolve born of necessity and hardened by the crucible of endless war. In the vast emptiness, each victory, however fleeting, was a testament to their unity and their unwavering commitment to a future where the light of the Imperium might yet shine, against all odds, even as the void embraced them with its cold, relentless grip. In the dim corridors of the flagship's command center, the air was heavy with anticipation and the unmistakable gravity of shared sacrifice. Within a secluded, windowless chamber, high-ranking officers from various Imperial forces gathered to negotiate the future. The room, illuminated only by the cold light of holographic displays and data streams, served as both a council and a sanctuary from the chaos raging outside. Here, differences were set aside, and a fragile alliance was forged, a covenant built on the promise of unity in the face of an ever-present threat. The atmosphere was charged with restrained determination. Leaders spoke in low, deliberate tones as they outlined strategies for coordinating their next moves against the enemy. Every word carried the weight of lives lost and the bitter memory of past betrayals. No lavish rhetoric was permitted. Instead, there was an unspoken understanding that their only currency was loyalty, measured not in titles or pride, but in blood and sacrifice. The commanders, many of whom had borne witness to the relentless cruelty of war, shared plans to combine their forces in a single decisive blow against the encroaching darkness. Outside the council chamber, the reality of battle imposed itself with brutal clarity. On shattered worlds and in the void between stars, units from once rival factions now fought side by side. Their coordinated maneuvers were a testament to the fragile accord that had been struck in that dimly lit room. In one fierce engagement, a joint force repelled a sudden assault on a critical outpost, their combined efforts halting an enemy advance that threatened to overrun a vital supply line. In another instance, experienced veterans from differing legions led their squads in a precise counterattack, the echoes of bolter fire and the roar of plasma merging into a singular, resolute cry for survival. Within the secret meetings, subtle gestures and measured exchanges confirmed the alliance. A firm handshake here, a discreet nod there. Each silent communication reinforced the commitment of those present. Their discussions were meticulous, every proposal examined for potential betrayal, every decision weighed against the harsh realities of an imperium besieged on all sides. Old enmities were temporarily forgotten, buried beneath layers of necessity and a shared understanding that the survival of humanity depended on their unity. Yet, even as these alliances took shape, there remained an undercurrent of tension. In the quiet moments between strategic discussions, the spectre of ambition and unspoken grievances flickered across guarded faces. Some commanders harbored private doubts about the loyalty of their newfound partners, while others viewed the cooperation as a temporary expedient rather than a lasting bond. However, the immediacy of external danger left little room for such hesitations. Every life lost on the battlefield, every fallen comrade, served as a reminder that loyalty and sacrifice were not abstract virtues, but tangible debts paid in blood. As the council ended and its participants returned to their respective vessels, the impact of their decisions began to ripple outward. Across the fleet, units moved into formation with a synchrony that belied the earlier discord. On distant battlefields, coordinated strikes and mutual support became the norm. In the relentless march of combat, the alliance was tested repeatedly. Each victory was a quiet testament to the power of unity, and every setback, a harsh lesson in the cost of disunion. In the midst of the chaos, a senior officer, his face lined with the grief of countless conflicts, reflected on the nature of their covenant. "We do not fight for glory," he murmured as he inspected the remnants of a recent engagement, "but for the promise we made to one another. Our honor is not in our individual triumphs, but in our willingness to stand together, even when the price is our very lives." His words resonated deeply with those who had witnessed the brutal realities of war and understood that, in these dark times, only the unyielding bonds of loyalty could light the path to survival. Thus the alliance, fragile though it might be, became a beacon amid the relentless night. In the face of overwhelming odds, the Dark Angels and their allies pressed forward, bound by a covenant not of fleeting convenience, but of iron and blood. Their pact, sealed in the quiet intensity of that hidden council room and proven on the shattered battlefields, was a promise that no matter how dire the circumstances, unity and sacrifice would remain the truest measures of honor in an age defined by endless conflict. The fleet veered away from the familiar battlegrounds and into a sector of space where light itself seemed to falter. Beyond the outer rim of known space, the Dark Angels' armada entered a region scarred by corruption, a galaxy whose very essence had been twisted into a labyrinth of decay. Here, the stars burned with a sickly hue, and nebulae swirled like spilled ink against a backdrop of perpetual gloom. Every sensor reading, every flicker on the display, confirmed that they had ventured into the darkest recesses of a forsaken universe. As the flagship's navigation systems struggled to reconcile the erratic warp signatures, the Legion's warriors braced themselves for what lay ahead. The void outside had transformed into a maelstrom of gravitational distortions and spectral energies that defied conventional physics. In this alien darkness, familiar coordinates were lost, and every course correction was a step into a realm where reality seemed mutable. The vessel's hull groaned under the strain as if echoing the sorrow of a dying cosmos, and the constant hum of the engines became a lament for all that had been sacrificed. The fleet soon encountered a cluster of derelict space stations and abandoned outposts. relics of a long-forgotten empire now crumbling into oblivion. These structures, tangled in a chaotic mesh of corridors and hidden chambers, resembled a vast labyrinth designed by madness itself. The corridors were narrow and claustrophobic, lit only by intermittent, flickering emergency beacons that cast long, distorted shadows upon corroded walls. Here, every step forward was a confrontation with external horrors, evidence of violent battles, broken weaponry scattered like discarded memories, and walls etched with cryptic symbols that spoke of rituals lost to time. Within these decrepit halls, the true cost of endless war revealed itself. The decay was not confined to the physical, it seeped into the very souls of the structures. Panels that once housed sophisticated defense systems now hung in disrepair, their circuits corrupted by an inexplicable malevolence. The stench of burnt ozone and rust mingled with a subtler, more insidious odor, a tang of despair that permeated every crevice. As squads of dark angels moved cautiously through the winding passages, the silence was punctuated by the echo of distant, unidentifiable sounds, a drip of water, a distant metallic scrape, the soft murmur of something ancient and forlorn. In the heart of this desolation, the Primarch led a select detachment on an expedition into a central labyrinth, where the air grew oppressively thick and the darkness pressed in from all sides. Each step through the narrow, twisting corridors was a descent into madness. The oppressive environment seemed to claw at the edges of sanity, whispering forgotten names and unuttered regrets into the minds of those who dared to listen. Shadows shifted in the peripheral vision, and every creak of the ancient metal was interpreted as the approach of unseen enemies. Here, in this crucible of decay, internal wounds began to mirror the external ruin. The detachment discovered remnants of past conflicts, abandoned command consoles, data logs filled with desperate pleas for mercy, and even personal belongings scattered in haste. These relics of warfare told a story of valor turned to despair, of ideals eroded by the relentless passage of time and bloodshed. The spectre of betrayal and the bitter tang of loss hung heavily in the stale air, reminding every warrior that the price of endless war was measured not merely in casualties, but in the slow erosion of hope. The Primarch paused before a shattered mural that once depicted a glorious victory, a testament to a bygone era when the Legion had known unity and purpose. Now the artwork was barely recognizable, its vibrant colors reduced to a palette of grays and ashen tones. In that moment, the Primarch felt the full weight of the abyss, not just the void of space, but the void within the hearts of those who had long fought without respite. His gaze hardened as he vowed silently that every fragment of honor, every drop of blood spilled in vain, would be avenged by a renewed commitment to their sacred duty. As the detachment pressed deeper into the labyrinth, every encounter with the haunted corridors became an intimate confrontation with their own mortality. The passage through the labyrinth was as much a journey into the outer darkness as it was an inward descent into the soul. In that harrowing silence, the true cost of their ceaseless crusade was exposed, a legacy of sorrow and sacrifice, where every step forward carved deeper scars into the fabric of their collective being. Thus, the Dark Angels continued their journey through the corrupted galaxy, each step in the labyrinth a testament to the relentless toll of war. In the void's embrace, external horrors and internal decay merged into one inexorable force, a reminder that in the endless battle against chaos, no victory came without sacrifice, and every advance was paid for in the currency of blood and shattered hope. Deep within a hidden inner sanctum of the flagship, a chamber carved from ancient stone and lit by the soft glow of forgotten relics, the Primarch stood alone. Here, far from the ceaseless clamour of battle and the endless void of space, he sought refuge in solitude. The chamber's cool air was heavy with the scent of incense and time, its walls etched with symbols of ancient oaths and faded triumphs. In this sacred retreat, the Primarch was forced to confront not the enemy outside, but the spectres of his own past. As he stepped further into the chamber, the light dimmed, and the flickering shadows began to stir with uncanny life. At first, they appeared as simple distortions on the polished stone walls, but soon the shadows deepened into forms, fleeting images of faces he had known and lost, voices from battles long past, and echoes of decisions that had once shaped the destiny of his legion. Each spectre bore the weight of memory and regret, a silent indictment of the choices made in the fires of war. The Primarch's eyes narrowed as these apparitions began their silent procession. There was the visage of a comrade whose valor had been sacrificed for the greater good, the mournful countenance of a mentor whose wisdom had been lost in the pursuit of relentless conquest, and even the ghostly silhouette of a fallen brother whose betrayal had haunted him through countless sleepless nights. They swirled before him like a turbulent maelstrom of guilt and sorrow, a symbolic trial of memory that demanded he face the ancient sins of his past. In that moment, the sanctum transformed into a crucible of self-examination. The Primarch felt the cold sting of regret and the searing heat of unatoned transgressions. Every step he took was a journey deeper into his own soul, each pause a moment to weigh the price of honor against the cost of ambition. The chamber, with its echoing silence and shifting shadows, became a mirror that reflected not only his physical form, but the myriad facets of his inner self. In the interplay of light and dark, he saw both the nobility of his purpose and the darkness that had once threatened to consume him. As the visions intensified, the Primarch was overwhelmed by the vivid memories of battles lost and victories that had come at too great a cost. He recalled moments when his decisions, made in the crucible of war, had left scars on those who had followed him. The faces of his fallen warriors, etched with both pride and pain, surged forward, each one a reminder that the path to glory was paved with blood and sacrifice. Amid these recollections, the Primarch felt an all-consuming yearning for redemption, a desperate need to atone for the sins of the past and reclaim the honor that had been tarnished by relentless conflict. In the silence of that inner sanctum, the trial became symbolic, a test not of physical might, but of moral resolve. The ghosts of his past did not speak in words. Their presence was a language of loss and remorse that transcended speech. Their silent accusations cut deeper than any enemy's blade, forcing him to confront the essence of his own soul. With each heartbeat, the Primarch acknowledged his failures and the weight of decisions that had led to betrayal, sacrifice, and the erosion of brotherhood. Yet, in this somber confrontation, he also rediscovered the core of his purpose, a resolute determination to bring unyielding justice to those who would defy the sacred tenets of honor. As the apparitions began to fade, replaced by a profound stillness, the Primarch felt a subtle shift within himself. The trial had left him raw and vulnerable, yet somehow purified by the act of confronting his inner demons. In that harrowing moment, he resolved that the wounds of the past would be the forge for a future defined by redemption. He would transform his grief into a relentless pursuit of justice, ensuring that the legacy of his legion would be one of honor restored through the crucible of self-reckoning. Steeling himself against the lingering echoes of regret, the Primarch took a final, measured breath. The shadows receded, and the inner sanctum returned to its silent vigil, a place of reflection and renewal. Now, armed with the hard-won clarity of his inner trial, he emerged from the chamber with an unyielding resolve. His path toward redemption was set, and his heart burned with a quiet, unwavering fire, a promise that, no matter how heavy the burden of guilt, the pursuit of justice and honor would guide him forward, beyond the darkness of the past and into the light of a renewed destiny. Deep in the void, the dark silhouette of a planet emerged from swirling cosmic mists, a homeworld once celebrated as a beacon of hope and unity, now marred by the scars of relentless war. As the fleet of the Dark Angels drew near, a bittersweet melancholy filled the hearts of its warriors. They were returning to a cherished land, now transformed into a desolate canvas of betrayal and time-worn sorrow, where every crater and ruined edifice testified to conflicts that had shattered dreams. The landing craft pierced the dense clouds of dust and debris, descending toward vast expanses of crumbling ruins. Once mighty cities, now reduced to fractured stone and twisted metal, stood as silent relics of a glorious past. Monuments that had once soared in tribute to human ingenuity now lay broken, their remnants scattered like fallen leaves across barren plains. Deep fissures cut across the earth, where titanic machines once roared in defiance, and dark chasms gaped open, swallowing fragments of a bygone era. Amid this devastation, nature still fought for survival. Stubborn, green shoots emerged from the ashen soil, a faint promise of renewal against overwhelming decay. As the warriors set foot on the scarred surface, the Primarch paused before the ruins of an ancient temple, a grand edifice that had once been the cultural heart of his people. In its crumbling arches and shattered columns, vibrant memories of laughter, learning, and unyielding unity clashed painfully with the desolation wrought by betrayal and time. The temple, once resplendent with life and hope, now served as a solemn monument to loss. Every broken stone and weathered inscription spoke of valor turned to despair, of dreams betrayed by the relentless march of conflict. Wandering through the remnants of the city, the legionaries encountered relics of their former glory. Faded murals on crumbling walls depicted heroic deeds and noble sacrifices. Once luminous statues of revered ancestors now lay tarnished and fractured, their features blurred by neglect. These vestiges of a once proud civilization evoked a deep, aching nostalgia, a reminder that the legacy of honor and unity was not entirely lost, even if it had been buried beneath layers of pain and ruin. Yet every relic also whispered of treachery, of a past marred by the bitter sting of betrayal that had torn apart brotherhood and left scars that time alone could not heal. In a quiet, decimated village, a small band of dark angels gathered around a ruined fountain. Its waters had long since stilled, and the silence that enveloped the square was profound, a stark contrast to the laughter and vibrant life that once filled the air. Here, in that brief interlude of reflection, they recounted tales of brighter days when hope was abundant and every moment shimmered with promise. But as the wind swept through empty streets and over crumbling facades, the painful reality became clear. The struggle to rebuild a shattered legacy was an arduous path, fraught with obstacles both seen and unseen. For the Primarch, this homecoming was a wound and a vow, a reminder of what had been sacrificed and a pledge to restore what had been lost. His heart, heavy with the burden of memory, ached at the sight of his once cherished planet now enslaved by despair. Yet, within that sorrow burned a quiet, unyielding resolve. The ruined homeworld was not beyond salvation. It was a challenge to reclaim honor where betrayal had left its stain. With every step among the ruins, he vowed to kindle the embers of hope and to forge a future from the shattered remnants of the past. Thus, as the Dark Angels embarked on the monumental task of rebuilding, Every act of restoration became an act of defiance against oblivion. The desolation of the homeworld was not merely a graveyard of memories. It was a blank canvas upon which a new destiny could be painted. Amid the ruins, the struggle to reconstruct a fractured legacy emerged as a poignant testament to lost hope. Each fallen column, each mended wall, echoed with the silent promise that even in the deepest despair, the spirit of unity and honor could be reborn. In that solemn homecoming, the Dark Angels found not only the echo of a glorious past, but also the resolve to reclaim a future where hope might one day shine once more. A storm of conflict raged across the shattered battlefield as traitorous foes and hidden adversaries surged from the darkness like wraiths. The air was rent with the clash of steel and the roar of bolter fire, punctuating the relentless drumbeat of war. Amid this chaos, the Primarch led his warriors with unyielding determination, his every step a declaration of vengeance against those who had once betrayed their sacred oath. In the midst of the carnage, his pursuit unfolded as a macabre ballet, a dance of blood and steel that blurred the line between retribution and despair. As the enemy's ambush took shape, the Primarch's gaze burned with a cold intensity that cut through the tumult. His armor, scarred by countless battles, shone beneath the eerie light of distant explosions, each flash a reminder of past betrayals that had scarred his soul. He moved like a phantom among the fallen, his blade an extension of his unquenchable fury. Every swing of his weapon was precise and deliberate, a rhythmic cadence that seemed choreographed to the grim music of conflict. The clash of metal on metal resonated like a mournful dirge, a stark echo of ancient wounds that had yet to heal. In one brutal engagement, a group of insurgents, their eyes wild with fanaticism and fueled by treachery, launched a coordinated assault on a strategic outpost. The Primarch, with a few loyalists flanking him, intercepted the enemy in a narrow corridor where shadows writhed and the echoes of footsteps multiplied in the gloom. Here, the confrontation became intensely personal. With every calculated strike, the Primarch carved through the traitor's ranks, his blade dancing in a blur of lethal precision. Each adversary he felled was not merely a target, but a spectre from the past, an embodiment of the betrayals that had once fractured his brotherhood. The sound of their defeat was a symphony of shattered hope and blood-soaked retribution, reverberating through the corridor like a solemn requiem. Elsewhere, hidden adversaries had gathered in the ruins of an ancient temple, their presence masked by the dark pillars and crumbling arches. These foes, shrouded in the guise of rebels and heretics, sought to undermine the unity of the Legion by striking from the shadows. As the Primarch advanced into the temple's depths, every step forward was met with resistance, a barrage of acid fire and silent, deadly strikes from unseen assailants. In the flickering gloom, the Primarch's mind was assaulted by memories of past treachery. Faces of fallen comrades and bitter betrayals flashed before him, fueling his determination to exact a penance that only blood could reconcile. The confrontation within those haunted walls was a dance of death, a rapid exchange of blows that left the temple echoing with the harsh cadence of clashing steel and anguished cries. Throughout the battlefield, the Primarch's relentless pursuit of vengeance was interwoven with the lingering sorrow of lost honor. Each confrontation, whether fought in the open or in the claustrophobic corridors of derelict structures, carried the weight of centuries-old grievances. The echoes of betrayal resonated in every parry and thrust. The cries of those who had been forsaken in the name of ambition and deceit fueled the Primarch's fury. He recalled with grim clarity the faces of those who had turned their backs on loyalty, their treachery a festering wound upon the legacy of his legion. In his mind, each swing of his blade was an act of atonement, a symbolic severance of the chains that bound him to a past marred by unfulfilled promises. Amid the chaos of the battlefield, as the dance of vengeance unfolded, the Primarch's resolve hardened into something nearly unbreakable. His warriors, inspired by his relentless spirit, fought with a unity that belied the bitter undercurrents of their shared history. Together they moved as one, their actions a precise yet brutal performance choreographed by the demands of survival and retribution. Even as the enemy faltered beneath the weight of their combined might, the cost of each victory was etched in deep, unhealed scars, scars that spoke of both sacrifice and the eternal hunger for justice. As dusk fell upon the ruined landscape and the embers of battle smouldered in the gathering darkness, the Primarch paused amidst the carnage. His eyes, blood-stained yet resolute, swept over the field where the dance of vengeance had left its indelible mark. The haunting echoes of past betrayals mingled with the sorrow of lost souls, a testament to the profound cost of endless war. In that quiet, grim moment, the Primarch vowed that every act of treachery, every whisper of disloyalty, would be repaid in full. His quest for redemption was far from over, but with each brutal engagement, his determination to restore honor and to forge a future free from the shadows of betrayal grew ever stronger. Thus the battlefield became a stage where vengeance and sorrow intertwined, and every encounter was a step in the ceaseless dance of retribution, a dance that would define the legacy of the Dark Angels for all eternity. The battlefield lay shrouded in the ash of ruin, a desolate stage where the monumental sacrifices of countless lives had been paid in the fleeting currency of triumph. Amid the rubble and scorched earth, the warriors of the Dark Angels moved slowly, their every step heavy with the grief of loss and the inescapable toll of relentless warfare. In the wake of their recent victories, hard-won and momentary, the true cost of glory was written in blood upon the fields, etched into the scars of every soul who had borne witness. As dawn broke, its weak light struggling to penetrate the perpetual gloom, the Primarch and his lieutenants gathered in a somber conclave near the shattered remnants of an ancient outpost. Here, among the debris of battle, the harsh truth became apparent. Glory, in its most exalted form, was paid for in the ultimate price. The fallen lay in silent testimony, their bodies a stark reminder that every victory was a debt repaid in the currency of life. The quiet murmur of the survivors spoke of battles fought with desperate valor, a wordless litany of sacrifice that resonated in the cold morning air. For many, the pain was a private, searing anguish. A veteran, his armor dented and blood-stained, sat wearily beneath the wreckage of a once mighty war machine. His eyes, dimmed by the weight of innumerable losses, reflected a sorrow that went beyond mere physical wounds. He recalled the faces of his comrades, brothers in arms who had given everything in the pursuit of honor. Their absence was a gaping void, a constant reminder that the fleeting taste of victory was forever shadowed by the memories of those who never returned. Their names, whispered in quiet moments and honored in hushed prayers, had become the sacred tally of the Legion's true cost. Around him, the collective grief of the warriors formed an unspoken bond. In every scar that marred their battle-worn armor, in every pained glance exchanged between comrades, there lay an enduring mark of the burden they carried. The battlefield was littered not only with the detritus of war, shattered weapons, broken shields, and the tattered remnants of banners, but also with the silent echoes of lives that had been sacrificed. Each fragment of debris was a testament to a moment when hope had been snuffed out by the harsh reality of combat. In the aftermath of the carnage, the Primarch wandered among the fallen, his gaze lingering on the small tokens of personal valor, a dented dog tag, a scorched insignia, the emblem of a long-forgotten honor. These relics, though seemingly insignificant, were imbued with the spirit of those who had fought with an unwavering commitment to the Emperor's cause. They were the tangible evidence that glory, no matter how brilliant, was always stained by the irrevocable loss of life. With every step, the Primarch felt the weight of this truth settle deeper into his heart, a burden that no victory could ever erase. Yet even as despair threatened to overtake him, the Primarch recognized a fierce resolve burning beneath the surface of his grief. The sacrifices of the fallen, though painfully irreplaceable, were not in vain. They had carved out a legacy, a somber narrative of relentless determination that would serve as both a reminder and a guide for the future. The memory of each sacrifice became a sacred vow, an enduring promise that every drop of blood shed would fuel the drive to restore honor and unity within the Legion. In the quiet moments following the carnage, as the wounded were tended and the silence of the aftermath settled like a heavy shroud, the Primarch addressed his weary warriors. His voice, though low, carried a clarity that cut through the oppressive gloom. "Let our triumphs be measured not in fleeting moments of glory, but in the honor of those we have lost," he declared, his words echoing against the ruined stone. "Their sacrifice is the foundation upon which we build our future. Every scar we bear is a reminder that glory comes at a price, and that price, though steep, will forever be our guide." Thus, in the midst of their collective mourning, the Dark Angels found a renewed purpose. The price of glory was etched into their very being, a constant reminder that every victory demanded sacrifice. With heavy hearts yet unyielding resolve, they vowed to honor the memory of the fallen by pressing onward in their eternal struggle. The blood that stained the fields was both a curse and a covenant, a solemn promise that the legacy of their sacrifice would serve as the cornerstone for a future forged in the unbreakable spirit of honor. And so, with each step taken on that scarred earth, the warriors carried not only their own pain, but also the immortal memory of those who had given their all, their lives the eternal price of glory. In the waning light of an era defined by ancient glory, the galaxy itself seemed to shudder as long-fallen empires crumbled into dust. Across the vast expanse of space, once mighty civilizations now lay in ruin, their proud monuments toppled and their legacies reduced to ghostly echoes. Amidst this cataclysmic shift, the Dark Angels found themselves navigating an uncertain order, a time when the old certainties had withered away, and a fragile new future trembled on the brink of possibility. As the fleet advanced through sectors once ruled by imperial giants, the scars of decay were everywhere. Planets that had once boasted vibrant cultures and thriving metropolises were now desolate wastelands. Crumbling cities and shattered fortresses bore witness to the passage of centuries and the relentless advance of time, their ruins standing as monuments to both the hubris and the inevitable fall of mighty empires. The shifting cosmic order was a silent, inexorable force. The old alliances, forged in eras of unchallenged dominance, had dissolved into chaos, leaving behind a void into which the Dark Angels and their allies now ventured. Within the ranks of the Legion, a parallel decay mirrored that of the worlds they once sought to conquer. The proud banners that had once symbolized unity and purpose now fluttered with tattered dignity against the backdrop of internal disillusionment. Fissures of doubt and weariness had begun to appear in the hearts of warriors who had long fought under the banner of unyielding duty. The discipline and zeal that once defined the Dark Angels had, over endless campaigns, given way to an undercurrent of somber resignation, a slow erosion of purpose that reflected the crumbling splendor of the civilizations they encountered. In the twilight of empires, the boundaries between savior and executioner blurred. Acts that had once been celebrated as noble sacrifices for the greater good now carried an ambiguous weight, a moral greyness where every triumph was tainted by the cost in human lives. The Primarch, whose once unassailable authority had guided his legion through countless battles, now bore the burden of choices made in a time of fading grandeur. Each decision, whether to extend mercy or deliver ruthless judgment, resonated with the uncertainty of an era in which the ideals of honor and duty were no longer absolute. In this twilight, the same blade that had once defended the innocent could just as easily become an instrument of brutal retribution, and the fine line between salvation and damnation was worn thin by the scars of perpetual conflict. The internal struggles of the Legion were interwoven with the external decay of the galaxy. As they patrolled war-torn sectors and reclaimed shattered worlds, the warriors could not help but see in the ruins a reflection of their own faltering state. The once crystalline discipline of the Dark Angels was now marred by silent grievances and the bitter taste of regret, a reminder that even the most formidable forces are not immune to the corrosive effects of endless war. In the quiet moments between brutal engagements, veterans recalled a time when their cause had been pure, when the promise of a glorious future had shone as brightly as the Emperor's light. Now, in the dimming twilight of empires, that promise had grown murky, eclipsed by the reality of sacrifice and the slow, inexorable march toward obsolescence. Yet even amid decay, there flickered the stubborn ember of hope. The Legion understood that in order to survive this shifting landscape, they must forge a new destiny from the remnants of the old. With every scar borne on their battle-worn armor, every memory of a fallen comrade etched into their hearts, they resolved to reclaim the honor that had once defined them. The path forward was uncertain, a labyrinth of moral quandaries and unforeseen challenges. But it was a path they would walk together, united by a common purpose to restore order to a galaxy on the brink of chaos. Thus, as ancient empires crumbled and the cosmos shifted into a new precarious order, the Dark Angels pressed onward. In this era of twilight, where the distinction between hero and executioner blurred, they vowed to become the architects of a renewed legacy. Their struggle was not only to vanquish external foes, but to rekindle the noble spirit that had once inspired a civilization. With the weight of the past anchoring their souls and the promise of a reimagined future beckoning them forward, the Legion marched into the uncertain night, undaunted, relentless, and determined to shape a destiny beyond the decay of old empires. Deep within the impregnable fortress, where the ancient stone corridors twisted like the veins of a long-forgotten titan, the highest echelons of the Dark Angels gathered in secrecy. Far from prying eyes and the relentless turmoil of battle, they met in hidden chambers carved out of the fortress's heart, a sanctum steeped in both reverence and trepidation. Here, beneath the dim glow of archaic Suspensor lamps and the steady hum of ancient machinery, the Conclave convened to confront the bitter truths that had long festered in the shadows of their storied past. In the cool, cavernous recesses of this inner sanctum, veiled by layers of reinforced stone and guarded by unwavering sentinels, the most senior commanders and doctrinal custodians of the Legion assembled around a massive, time-worn table. Its surface, etched with cryptic symbols and scarred by the passage of countless wars, bore silent testimony to decisions made in eras when honor was as unyielding as the Emperor's will. The air was heavy with the scent of incense and ancient oils, reminders of rituals past, while the subdued light cast elongated shadows that danced in unison with the murmurs of the gathered few. Within this clandestine council, long-hidden grievances and secrets were brought to light. Each participant, draped in dark, battle-worn armor that bore the marks of both valor and sorrow, spoke with measured tones that betrayed the weight of decades of conflict. One among them, a battle-hardened preceptor whose eyes had witnessed the rise and fall of entire worlds, intoned softly, "Our sins, as deep as the void, can no longer be ignored. We must purge these stains upon our honor, even if it means confronting truths that will rend our souls." His words resonated across the chamber, stirring a murmur of agreement and an undercurrent of dread. The meeting unfolded like a somber liturgy. Secret doctrines, long held as inviolate pillars of their ancient order, were questioned and re-examined under the harsh light of pragmatic necessity. Bitter accounts of treachery and misguided ambition were laid bare, each revelation a dagger to the heart of the Legion's legacy. As the discussion deepened, a palpable tension filled the room. A desperate need for unity clashed with the sanctity of traditions that had been preserved through blood and centuries of sacrifice. The leaders debated fiercely over the proper course of action, weighing the imperative to restore collective honor against the risk of unearthing further dissent. In hushed voices, they recounted episodes of betrayal, whispers of a time when trust had been shattered by ambition and pride. The spectral memories of fallen comrades, whose sacrifices had been marred by infighting, seemed to hover in the dim light, their silent eyes urging the Conclave to act. One commander, his voice strained with emotion, recalled, "We have witnessed the decay of brotherhood and the erosion of unity. Our enemies do not wait. They exploit our divisions. If we do not cast off our old sins, our very foundation will crumble beneath us." His plea was both an indictment of past errors and a call to forge a new path, one that transcended the limitations of their inherited dogmas. Yet, amid the fervor for renewal, many still clung to the doctrines that had defined them for generations. The very tenets that had once unified their ranks now stood as barriers to a more flexible, adaptive future. The Conclave's debates were a delicate dance, a balancing act between reverence for tradition and the unyielding need to evolve. Some argued that the purity of their ancient codes was the only thing that set them apart from the corrupt forces that now sought to tear the Imperium apart. Others countered that clinging to those rigid doctrines only served to bind them in a cycle of unending strife, preventing the necessary unity that would allow them to prevail. As the hours passed and the discussions deepened, the weight of their decisions became almost tangible, a burden borne not only by the present, but by the legacy of every fallen warrior and every lost battle. In that charged silence, the Conclave reached a fateful decision. They would purge the Legion's hidden sins through a series of targeted reforms. These measures, though radical, were seen as the only path to genuine unity. Each proposal was a solemn promise to honor the sacrifices of the past, while forging a future unshackled by outdated honor codes. When the meeting finally adjourned, the leaders dispersed into the winding corridors of the fortress, their hearts heavy yet resolute. The secret conclave had laid bare the inner workings of a fractured legacy, and had set in motion a process that would test the very soul of the Dark Angels. The decisions made in that hidden chamber were destined to echo through the ages, a bittersweet testament to a moment when the need for unity outweighed the sanctity of unalterable tradition. Thus, amid the shadows of ancient stone and the lingering spectre of past sins, the Dark Angels prepared to step into a future defined by both renewal and sacrifice. The secret conclave had become a turning point, a sacred promise that from the depths of internal strife, a more unified, relentless force would arise, ready to face the encroaching darkness with a resolve forged in the fires of bitter truth. The void shuddered with the malignant roar of chaos as the forces of the warp unleashed their most devastating offensive upon the Dark Angels. In an instant, the familiar order of battle was torn asunder by the onslaught of unholy fury. The once cold vacuum of space transformed into a maelstrom of seething energies and writhing shadows, where the boundaries between reality and nightmare dissolved into a disorienting haze. The Dark Angels, battle-worn and resolute, found themselves thrust into a confrontation unlike any they had faced before. A descent into darkness that threatened to engulf both body and soul. As the fleet navigated treacherous warp currents, colossal rifts in the fabric of space splintered open around them, disgorging monstrous denizens born of pure chaos. These abominations, grotesque and ever-shifting, emerged from the void like the twisted nightmares of an ancient, forgotten epoch. Their forms defied logic, blending elements of flesh, metal, and raw, pulsating energy into hideous parodies of life. The very air seemed to tremble with the malignant pulse of these entities, and the darkened corridors of the warships echoed with the unearthly wails of beings that should not exist. The offensive was swift and merciless. In the heart of a star cluster where light once danced in stately harmony, cataclysmic battles erupted with a fury that obliterated conventional order. The Dark Angels' vessels, scarred by previous engagements, now fought amid an ever-changing landscape of warp-induced chaos. Bolter fire and plasma discharges wove together with bursts of demonic energy as ships clashed, their trajectories erratic, and their courses dictated by the volatile whims of the warp. In these battles, time itself seemed to fragment, and every moment stretched into an eternity of violent, swirling madness. On the bridge of the flagship, the Primarch's gaze was fixed on the chaos unfolding outside. His eyes, steeled by countless trials and sharpened by the fires of betrayal, betrayed no fear, even as the tendrils of the warp reached across the void, seeking to ensnare and corrupt. Every command he uttered was a defiant challenge to the forces that sought to tear his legion apart from within, a vow that even the most unrelenting horrors would be met with unwavering resolve. His voice, calm yet imbued with a fierce intensity, rallied his warriors to hold fast against the tide of darkness, even as the battlefield around them dissolved into a surreal landscape of terror. Amid the chaos, the very nature of warfare took on an almost otherworldly quality. The distinction between solid matter and ethereal nightmare blurred as the Dark Angels fought on decks, slick with a shimmering, oily residue, the physical manifestation of the warp's corrupting influence. In one desperate engagement, a cadre of assault marines clashed with a host of demonic entities on a platform suspended between reality and oblivion. Their weapons, honed to lethal precision, clashed with claws and tendrils that defied mortal comprehension. Each strike, every parry, was an act of defiance against a force that sought to unmake them, and with each fallen enemy, the resounding echo of battle was a grim reminder that survival was measured in blood and tenacity. Yet even as the demonic horde pressed relentlessly, the Dark Angels pressed their own counter-offensive with grim determination. Tactical formations that had once been a model of disciplined efficiency now adapted fluidly to the anarchic battlefield. Units maneuvered through swirling maelstroms of warp energy, their paths uncertain and fraught with peril, yet their spirit unbroken. The constant barrage of demonic power tested not only their martial prowess, but the very limits of their unity. In the face of the warp's unyielding horror, every warrior felt the burden of an endless war, a reminder that the path to victory was paved with both the valor of sacrifice and the sorrow of irrevocable loss. In the midst of this maelstrom, the Dark Angels confronted the full, unrelenting horror of chaos incarnate. The demonic entities, with their eldritch power and malevolent intelligence, were not mere adversaries, but living embodiments of the nightmares that haunted the darkest corners of the warp. Their presence was a constant, pulsating threat, a reminder that in the depths of chaos, no soul was safe, and no honor could be reclaimed without a staggering price. Yet even as the darkness pressed in from all sides, the warriors of the Dark Angels fought with a singular, indomitable purpose. They were not merely defending their vessel or their honor. They were waging a battle for the very soul of the Imperium, a struggle against a force that sought to erase all light from existence. Thus, in the heart of the relentless onslaught, as cataclysmic battles erupted where reality and nightmare converged, the Dark Angels steeled themselves for the unending descent into chaos. Every burst of demonic fire, every clash of steel against corrupted flesh, underscored the grim truth that in this war, victory was a fleeting illusion, paid for in the unyielding currency of blood and sacrifice. And so they fought on, resolute and defiant, their spirit a solitary beacon against the overwhelming darkness. Amid the shattered remnants of countless battles and the desolation of ruined worlds, a fragile hope began to kindle. The once proud war zones, where the cries of the fallen still echoed among broken fortifications and scorched earth, now bore the tentative signs of renewal. In the wake of ceaseless conflict, where devastation had long reigned supreme, the embers of life stirred quietly, an almost imperceptible spark that promised the possibility of rebirth. Across the ravaged landscape, the Dark Angels' battered fleet descended upon a planet scarred by war. Here, amid crumbling citadels and the debris of forgotten glory, a new chapter was being written. The remnants of past triumphs and tragic losses lay intertwined with the slow, insistent pulse of regeneration. In the ruins of an ancient city, where walls once reverberated with the clamor of battle now lay silent under a blanket of dust, a group of new recruits stepped forward. Their eyes, wide with a blend of determination and youthful resolve, shone with the unspoken promise that they too could become part of this legacy. A legacy that was as much about survival as it was about honor. Beside these fresh faces, battle-hardened veterans moved with deliberate grace. Their armor, etched with scars of wars past and the memories of fallen comrades, served as a testament to both their resilience and the bitter cost of conflict. In hushed conversations beneath the remnants of once mighty arches, these seasoned warriors shared lessons learned in the crucible of endless warfare. Their voices, roughened by loss yet laced with unwavering conviction, carried the weight of experience and the hope that, through unity, the wounds of the past might one day heal. Together, the veterans and the recruits forged a tentative bond, one that bridged generations of strife and sacrifice. They gathered in makeshift forges and assembly halls carved out of the ruins, where broken relics were carefully salvaged and repurposed into tools of reconstruction. In these grim workshops, the sounds of clanging metal and the steady rhythm of labor became the new anthem of the Legion. Every measured strike of the hammer and every calculated weld was an act of defiance against the despair that had once threatened to consume them all. Yet the process of renewal was neither swift nor without pain. The scars of war were etched deeply into the very fabric of the world they sought to rebuild. In the ruined corridors of ancient cathedrals and beneath the shattered domes of once vibrant cities, memories of past glories and losses lingered like ghosts. Each repaired wall and restored monument was a bittersweet reminder that the price of victory had been paid in blood, and that no triumph could erase the shadow of betrayal and sacrifice. The slow, painful process of healing demanded both physical reconstruction and an internal mending of hearts hardened by endless battles. As dusk fell over the recovering planet, the united forces gathered on a battered ridge overlooking the valley below. There, beneath a sky streaked with the colors of both ruin and rebirth, the Primarch addressed his assembled warriors. His voice, tempered by both grief and unwavering resolve, resonated across the silent landscape. Let every scar be a testament to our sacrifice, and every brick we lay a promise that hope will rise from the ashes. Today, we build not just for the Imperium, but for the memory of those who fell in its defense. In that solemn moment, amid the twilight of devastation and the first tender shoots of renewal, the Dark Angels and their new brethren vowed to reclaim their legacy, no matter the cost. Thus, even as the scars of war persisted, the promise of rebirth shone like a beacon through the darkness, a fragile, enduring light that would guide them forward into an uncertain, yet hopeful, future. Beneath a sky roiling with storm and fire, the battlefield lay drenched in the crimson testament of war. In the distance, the silhouette of a monstrous adversary, an embodiment of treachery and despair, loomed like a blighted spectre over the field. This was no mere enemy. It was the living manifestation of all that had been betrayed, a culmination of the sins and dark ambitions that had once fractured the Legion. Today, in the waning hours of a cataclysmic conflict, the Primarch led his reunited Legion into a confrontation that would decide the fate of their legacy. As the vanguard surged forward, the ground itself seemed to weep with the blood of countless fallen warriors. Every step toward the enemy was laden with the weight of past transgressions, each footprint a silent dirge for honor lost and bonds severed by treachery. Amid the chaos, the Primarch's voice rose above the tumult, resolute and unyielding. For every soul that has been sacrificed, for every promise broken in the name of false glory, we stand as one. Today we reclaim our destiny and honor our fallen brethren with an oath that shall bind us for eternity. In that charged moment, the Legion, their armor streaked with blood and scars, converged on the enemy's position. The clash that ensued was a maelstrom of steel and fury, a symphony of battle cries, the clash of blades, and the relentless pounding of bolter fire. The embodiment of treachery met their combined might head-on, its form shifting with malevolent energy, as though it fed on the very despair of its foes. Yet the Dark Angels pressed forward with unyielding determination, every swing of their weapons a defiant repudiation of betrayal. Amid the swirling chaos, the Primarch cut a path through the enemy's ranks with a ferocity that turned the tide of battle. Each enemy that fell was not just a victory in combat, but a cathartic reckoning, a moment when the dark echoes of past sins were driven back into the void. His presence, an unbreakable beacon of resolve, rekindled the spirit of his warriors. They rallied around him, their voices rising in unison as they prepared to seal their fate with a solemn vow. When the final surge came, the Legion halted in a field bathed in the blood of its adversaries. The ground was a canvas of sacrifice, every inch marked by the relentless cost of victory. In that grim tableau, the Primarch gathered his warriors. Their faces, grim and resolute, bore the heavy marks of loss. With voices choked by both grief and fierce determination, they swore an oath, a covenant forged in the crucible of combat and sealed by the eternal memory of those who had fallen. "Let this be our final oath," the Primarch intoned, his voice echoing across the blood-soaked field, "that we shall never falter, never allow treachery to rise again. Every drop of blood, every shattered life, will forever remind us of the price of glory. We are bound by our honor, and by this oath we will rebuild, we will endure, and we shall reclaim the light, that once shone bright in our name. In that hallowed moment, as the last vestiges of the enemy were vanquished, a silence fell over the battlefield, a silence heavy with both triumph and profound sorrow. The cost was incalculable. Countless lives had been sacrificed, and the echoes of lost honor and unfulfilled prophecies would haunt the future of the Legion. Yet even in the midst of that grim reality, there shone a spark of hope. The oath they had sworn, irrevocable and eternal, would be the foundation upon which they would rebuild. Victory had been achieved at a terrible cost, and as the wounded and the weary gathered to honor their fallen, the Primarch and his legion understood that the future would forever be haunted by the shadows of their past. Still, with that final, unyielding oath, they marched onward into the uncertain dawn, a testament to the enduring spirit of honor forged in blood.